It's the Digital Babble with your host, Flipper. Colorful commentary on your photography. Seen on fingerlakes1.com.
Hey, everybody. It's me, Flipper, here on the Digital Babble. And this is a show where we talk about photography and Photoshop and how to take certain types of scenes and photos. And as we get into it a little bit more, we're going to get a lot of different techniques out there. I'm going to try to get some guests, portrait photographers, landscape photographers, to maybe come on the show, Skype in, and maybe talk about some of the techniques that they like to do. Maybe get some artists on that use Photoshop and get some of their techniques and what they really like to do with certain photos. And of course, the show is broken up into two sections. And first part is always photography. I talk about the different techniques, the different buttons, how to take photos, how to use your camera, and that's pretty much the start of the show. And then about halfway through, then we get into the photo edits, and I got a real treat this week. I got three edits, landscape photography edits that I'm going to work on, and if you haven't figured it out yet, we're going to be talking about the landscape button here on your camera, and when to use it, what it does, how it works, and what it does, and what are the pros and cons to using it. I got some really great examples that show some contrasting features of each, if you're in full auto mode or whether you're in landscape mode. It really does, you do see a difference, and the camera does think differently when you're on these different scenes. As you probably, if you saw last week's show, and if you want to tune into any of the other shows or check out any of the other shows, you can go check us out at tdbny.com. Sorry, tdbny.com. And that's going to be our home for all the past shows. You can also check us out on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. If you want to give me an email with questions, comments, if you want to get your photos on to be photo edited up, maybe you got something that you're just like, I just really want another look at this. See what you can do with it. You can send it to us at thedigitalbabble@gmail.com, and that'll get right to us. Please make sure not to make them too big of files, and nothing more than 1280 is appreciated, so that we can download them quickly and work on them. That pretty much takes care of the beginning of the show. This week I'll be covering the Scenic Mode on your camera. So I'm going to pop over to our little learning board here that we got, and here is a basic Nikon point and shoot camera. As you can tell, I've diagrammed out where the shutter is and the mode dial is. And what we're going to do is we're going to set that mode dial. Now, depending on what type of camera you have, depends on how that mode dial is laid out, and if it's a digital mode dial or if it's just a switch or a dial on the actual camera. So read your instructions on your camera, because that's always the best thing you can do for yourself if you're trying to take pictures, try and take good pictures. I know I've had a lot of people ask different questions, and I'm really thinking about doing a question and answer session on this show. So if you do have questions about your camera, please send them in to thedigitalbabble@gmail.com, and I will do my best to answer them for you here live on the air. So anyway, this is a Nikon point and shoot camera. It's got the actual mode dial. It actually has the actual Scenic Mode setting. So let's see, we're gonna pop that photo off, and here's a basic diagram of what the dial would look like if you were looking at it from a top-down angle. As you can see, the little mountain range is the Scenic Mode. It basically tells the camera that what's in front of the camera is going to be a scene, a very scenic mountain range, lake. You need a lot of depth of field, front to back. It makes the camera think a little bit differently. So, what changes to the camera does it make? It basically does the following: attempts to focus close to infinity. What this means is that on a camera lens, there's an infinity setting for the lens. So, like saying if you have a SLR, you would rack it out to infinity on the focus ring. So you would turn it to the infinity symbol, which is a sideways 8. that would mean that it is focused at infinity. So the furthest possible distance from you is in perfect focus. And then it's trying to focus just off of infinity to get the scene to be as sharp as it can be from front to back. So that's the first thing it does, is it changes how the camera focuses. Second thing it does is it does evaluative exposure metering, which means it meters the entire frame, and it looks for the highlights, it looks for the shadows, and tries to guess at the best possible exposure for what's in front of your camera. Sometimes this can lead to anomalies, but most of the time you can pull up in a sunny, maybe you're in a field and it's nice and bright and sunny, and just pull up and fire and it'll be just fine. We'll get into the pros and cons in just a second. Another thing it does is calculates the shutter aperture and ISO based on a higher f-stop number. What this higher f-stop number does is it gives you a more depth of field from front to back. Let's see, where's my hands here? That's that hand, that's that hand. Gotta use this whole camera thing, it's reversed. So front to back. So the front object is in focus, the back object is in focus, and that's what it tries to do. It tries to give you as much depth of field from front to back as it can possibly give you. Which usually means that the f-stop number is going to be higher, which means the opening of the lens will be smaller. What this essentially does is, instead of the light wrapping around the edges, it literally comes in and it prevents any type of anomalies or bokeh happening. The blur that happens when you open up the lens and let a lot of light in. The less light you light in, the less blur there would be. So that's kind of the physics behind that. It also tries to set the white balance as close as possible to actual sunlight. Actual sunlight ranges somewhere between 5200 and 5800 Kelvin. 5200 and 5800 Kelvin, those numbers is like a temperature degree, and it's to describe the quality of light, the color of light that is being produced by a particular light source. The sun, for example, direct sunlight is 5500 K, so Kelvin. What that does for us is it gives us a really good comprehension and a measuring tool to tell us what is our color temperature as we shoot different scenes. When you're looking at fluorescent lights like I have here, the fluorescent lights that I have in here are going to be somewhere around the 2800, 3200 range, which means that they're giving off a bluish purplish tint or bluish greenish tint, depending on what flavor of compact fluorescence you have. If they're also if they're shaded, so if they have a shade on it as well. Oh, look, my mascot's behind me. Hi, Oscar, say hi. And basically, it depends on what modifies the light source. So if you have a lampshade, great example, I've got a lamp right here. And this lampshade probably colors that purplish bluish light in a yellowish way. So now it's taking purple blue light and adding to that a yellowish haze. So by doing that, you can modify your color temperature. Shade, like saying if you're sitting in the shade of a tree, or you're outside in direct sunlight and you're sitting in the shade. The shade of direct sunlight typically ranges around 6200 Kelvin up to 6800 Kelvin. And this white balance thought process, the temperatures range from a bluish, whoops, wrong hand. So from a bluish tone to a reddish tone. And that's what the color spectrum is blue to red. So the higher the number, the redder the light is, or the more red is put into the light. And that's where we get color balance from. Now, I'm not going to go into much more of that right now. We'll get into that in another show, is how to properly balance your photos, properly get your white balance. We're just going to let the camera do it. So what we're going to just say here is that in the Scenic Mode, it's going to automatically look for the 5500, 5800, 6000 Kelvin white balance to try to say, hey, we're in direct sunlight. Or if you're inside, maybe you're in a gymnasium, or maybe you're at the state fair and you're looking at the sprawling booths going side down the aisle, and you just want to take a picture of that. if the light temperature in there is fluorescent, it's going to try to bring it down to like the 4800 or the 4500 just to say, hey, okay, that's closer to what it's supposed to be. It's going to look for something white in that scene to balance off of. Okay, so why are all these settings good? Basically, the depth of field will be maxed out. It's a great benefit because a lot of people have a hard time with scenes, especially with SLRs, trying to get that really deep depth of field from, let's see, this is my backhand, this is my front hand, right? So from front to back, getting that detail to get that from both sides is very difficult to get with some of the standard lenses out there. So by having a camera setting that tries to change the autofocus and make it a little bit more appealing or focus a little differently, you don't have to think so much about it. So it will maximize that depth of field. It will also give you as much detail as possible from front to back in your scene. Another good thing is it increases the contrast. By using the higher f-stop number, you're going to increase the contrast of your scene. Now, the reason this is probably beneficial, and I'm saying probably because not all scenes are made the same, but higher contrast, a lot of times when you have a big sprawling, waterfall or field or whatever sprawling out in front of you, you're going to want to capture as much detail, and that additional contrast will give you additional detail. So your photo will look like it has objects in it instead of just blotches of color. So that additional increase of contrast might actually give a benefit to beginning shooters or even professional shooters, depending on if you use that mode. But that additional contrast, it will create those textures. So like saying if you're looking at a field of wheat, you might get some really nice contrasty wheat shaft, so you'll see every wave of grain in there, so that it gives the photo a little bit more contrast, a little bit more substance. So another thing that's kind of good is the autofocus will change. I don't know how to describe this because I wrote it wrong on my notes here, but the autofocus will change to try to focus as close to infinity as possible. If you happen to aim at the ground and you focus, it's going to be wherever that is. But the point is that if you're just focusing on the entire scene, it's going to start out at infinity and then, well, out here at infinity and then work its way back to wherever it finds the most depth of field. And that's really the benefits to Scenic Mode. Now, auto mode doesn't do all those things. Auto mode, I think we talked about 3 shows ago. It just kind of sets a few basic things, a few basic parameters, pull up, shoot, bang, you're done. And I'm going to show you some examples of auto mode versus Scenic Mode so you can really see the contrasting differences between the two modes. Okay, some of the bad features of this. When you set, of course, whenever you set any of your auto modes like Scenic or whatever, you do lose a little bit of creative control. You're kind of at the whim of the camera making the decision, which is okay. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to say it's bad, but it definitely does take away a little bit of that extra control. And if you're like me, I like to be a control freak when I'm working with cameras because I like to know what I'm doing, and then I want to be able to twist the dials and go, okay, I want to go from this picture that I just took to this picture which I have in my head. And I just like to have that control. The camera's scene evaluation, where it meters the entire scene, may give you a recommendation or may come up with an anomaly, because if you have something really bright in the scene, like saying if there's a shiny car sitting out in the middle of a field and it's reflecting the light directly back at the camera, there is a possibility that the meter mode or the metering would be off or be shifted more towards the bright spectrum, so everything in the scene would be dark except for that car. So those anomalies do exist, and it's something to be aware of. It's always good to check your photo after you take it, especially in the digital age now. We can hit play or preview and go, oh yeah, that took it the right way. Oh no, it didn't. Okay, what did I do wrong, or what did the camera do wrong? And then you're going to look for different anomalies, like saying something really, really bright or something really, really dark, something that's just sucking light out of the scene, like maybe a dark shadowy area under a tree might do that. So those anomalies do exist. It's something to be aware of when you're working with the Scenic Mode. Let's see, where are we? Of course, it leaves 100% of the decisions of how to set the camera up to the camera, so be aware of that. It does increase the contrast significantly, enough where it's noticeable in pictures, where it could create strange color cast or tonal shifts. And what I mean by that is that it'll say, okay, I want to set my aperture at f8, and then I'm going to take and set my white balance at 5500. Bang, I take the picture. All of a sudden, that green grass now looks orange or kind of greeny red color. Kind of shifts more towards the red. Or maybe the opposite's true. You have a foggy day. You're out, maybe you're down on the lake and you have a foggy day and the fog is just covering the lake and it's so beautiful, and you got the dock out there and it looks like all this fog is just kind of like the lake had lifted up and now that's the water. And you go to take that might be just the opposite. It's going to say, okay, there is no contrast in the scene. I have no way to focus to infinity. And then it's going to make some adjustments and some settings, and then the anomaly would be, it would be washed out. It would be way too bright. So those are some things to keep in mind as well. The focusing may miss the mark, whatever you're trying to focus on. So saying if you're focusing dead center in the scene and you're out there to your horizontal line, out there as far as you can get, the focusing probably will hit fine. If you're kind of aiming in a different area and you're trying to get the infinity way out here at the top of the scene, but down here at the bottom you have a lot of close objects, it might focus on those close objects instead of the far away objects. And those are things that you want to be aware of, is that where are you focusing? Where is your focusing? Where's your focal point in the scene? Pardon me. It could also do a possible slower shutter speed depending on the light. What I mean by that is a lot of times the best light that you can get for scenic modes and scenes is to have a lower light scenario, a directional light. And what I mean by that is between the hours of 10:30 and 2:30, you probably shouldn't be out shooting scenes because it's directly overhead. The sun is directly overhead. It lacks contrast, or it becomes very harsh contrast depending on what you're shooting. Not the best light for scenes, but if you shoot a little earlier or a little later, now you're starting to talk, because now the sun's lower, you know, and the light's coming in from the side. It's going to create contrast. It's going to create texture and tone. And it's going to be just right on the spot. Now, by doing that, you're going to have less available light, so the camera's going to have to compensate for that. So you might end up with a slow shutter speed. That being said, get a tripod. Doesn't have to be the best tripod in the world, just as long as it's stable. Put your camera on that tripod when you shoot scenes, and you will be very happy with the results. So let's do a couple quick examples here. So right here is a shot I took this morning. Just decided to go out and shoot some cattails down on the lake, over here at Cuga Lake. And as you can see, on the left is auto mode, on the right is the actual scenic mode. You'll notice three big things here. The white balance is slightly different. The contrast is definitely pumped up. You can see that in the cattails. And then also the color shift is just slightly off. The blues just don't look like blue. They, and I think it kind of gives it a more of a green color is what it does. But I'm being very critical of it. So, but those are the three big things that this photo demonstrates, is that auto mode is on the left and the scenic mode is on the right. And like I said, you can really see it in the cattails, the high difference between contrast, the higher contrast. Next one, how are we doing on time? We're doing well. Okay, here's, it was a picture of a barn and the bridge over here on 89 South. It's quite a nice picture, or can be quite a nice picture. Here's a big difference. Auto mode's on the left and scenic mode's on the right. Increase the contrast by pumping up the f-stop to probably, I think it was f8. And you'll notice here on the right was taken, I think, f-stop 3.6. And you'll see that the blues are a little more blue, but there's a lot less contrast. You don't get as much texture. Also, there's a slight color shift, not much, but a slight one. But in both of these, it's pretty focused in front to back, except for when you blow up the auto one, when you blow it up so you can see the background, that background past that one tree is blurred out. So it didn't quite get the focusing right on this one. Here's another bridge. I happened to drive up around close to that bridge, and I got a different bridge. You'll see here another good example of how Scenic Mode increases or pumps up that contrast. You see here the bridge is very, very dark, especially underneath the bridge. You can see the difference in contrast. You can also see that it got a little bit darker. You can also see it in the trees. The trees are more defined. They're also very stick-like. You can see them very clear. Instead of where on the auto mode, it kind of blurred them out a touch. Again, the focusing from front to back, it focused just fine up front on the bridge, but the back stuff didn't quite work so well. I think I got one more example. Oh, okay. Seneca Falls Visitor Center, or I forget, Community Center, I think it's called. And I'm over on the Levito Trail, right across the canal. Very nice area to go shoot. A great place to take portraits if you ever get a chance. Just come on down to Seneca Falls and ask somebody where the Levito Trail. I can't even pronounce that. Try that 5 times fast. Again, here you can see the contrast difference, especially in the building. You can see a little bit of a color shift. You can see the contrast in the cloud. You can see a major sharpness on the one that's on the right, which is the Scenic Mode. From front to back, very sharp. On the one on the right, not so sharp in the front, not so sharp in the back. So those are the major differences for taking scene modes. Taking shots with your camera set to the Scenic Mode. Well, we're a couple minutes past to get right into Photoshop. So that's the first part of the show. I talk about cameras and photography, talk about different techniques. This week is all about setting your camera on an auto mode for scenics. In other words, something in front of you that has a lot of different elements. Front to back needs to be more sharply in focus than maybe a portrait, because you want the portrait to be sharp, but the rest of it not so sharp. So those are some things that the Scenic Mode does. Now, once you take those shots, what are you going to do with them? So we're going to take 3 of my favorite scenic shots that I've taken over the years and pop them into Photoshop, and we're going to go through some basic stuff, just some painting with light, one of my favorite techniques, and maybe a couple other things just to demonstrate Photoshop a little bit. If there is something very specific that you want to see in Photoshop, give me an email, thedigitalbabble@gmail.com. I do like interaction with our listeners, so I do accept any and all your emails, and I will get back to you. If you got questions on your camera, you got a question on how to take a particular scene, shoot me an email. I'll see what I can do. All right, so let's get right into Photoshop here. Well, actually, first we're going to look at some images here. So this first image was taken of Watkins Glen. It's I call it the stepping falls, because it's one of the only falls that only drops maybe a couple 3 feet every fall, and there's like 7 falls between the back of the photo to the front of the photo. So this is a very neat shot. It was taken with an SLR. It was, I think f/22 is what I took it with. It was on a tripod. I think it was like a 15-second exposure. That's why the water here, the water just is absolutely like painted on gloss, but then the rocks are nice and sharp, and you can see all the detail up here. Now, one of the things I'd want to do with this is I want to tone down the brightness of the front of the scene, because that's one of the problems with taking a long exposure as well, is that the front of the scene might get a little over bright, or it might overcook, and the back of the scene gets a little muddy or darker. So either we can bring up the back of the scene, or we can dull out the front of the scene and then bring everything up all at once. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to actually dull down the fronts, and then I'm going to bring up the picture as a whole all together. I think a couple of the other things that I might, well, we'll see what happens when we get there. So let's pop into Photoshop, and I got our picture up here right on screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the select right off the bat. I'm going to select that highlights range. So I'm going to go into the color range. I'm going to select the color range. I'm going to go up to the select button. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to say highlights. And notice it gives me the falls. You can see it here in the preview. Looks like the falls in the middle and then those rocks up front. So I'm going to take that. That's going to be my selection. I'm going to go up and I'm going to take and I'm going to modify that selection just a touch. And we're going to feather it just a little bit, maybe 5 pixels, not too much, just so that we can kind of feather out our edit just a little bit. All right, I'm going to take it, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to make a new layer, going over here to the new paper icon down here. It gives me a new layer. I'm going to edit, paste this. This way my background layer is preserved. Now, if I get rid of the background layer, you'll notice that all you see is the highlights. It's feathered out. You can see that they're kind of featherish, you know, kind of blurry around the edges. There's good reason, because what we want to do is we want to blend any type of edit that we're going to do with these. So I'm going to bring this back, and I got now the whole picture as a whole, and I got the top and the top layer as my highlights. I'm going to go up to Image and Adjustment, because I'm just going to affect this one layer. I'm just going to change this one layer. And we're going to take, and we're just going to do a little bit of a levels, and we're going to just take and bring it down just ever so slightly here. Maybe a little bit more. Whoops, too much. All right, let's see here. Wrong way. There we go. So here we are back at, let me get back to 1 here. So the way the levels tool works, so I'm going to give you a little bit about the levels tool. You have presets, which I'm not going to get into right now, but channels. So what color channel are you going to work on? You want to work on all the channels, which would be R, G, and B, red, green, and blue. Or do you want to work in just a red channel, green channel, or blue channel? I'm going to work in all the channels for right now until we get into some more advanced edits. But the input levels is a sliding scale, which is a 8-bit number in the computer. So ones and zeros, 8 slots of them. And what that gives us is up to 255 decimal mathematically. I know this is getting, you know, real mathy and it's weird. But the reason why it starts at 255 and the bottom is 0 is because of that mathematical function. Now, the 1 in the middle is your balance point. So you say, okay, this is my midpoint, 1. Now, as you move up the scale or down the scale, that gives you an idea of which way you're heading for your tonal values. So it's your proportion. So I'm going to take and I'm going to slide this middle scale down because I want to actually darken those highlights up just a little bit. We don't want them brighter because now they look glowing and weird kind of. Let's darken it up just a touch. I might actually even increase the bottom end contrast just a touch. Yeah, that looks good. So now if you notice up here, the rocks got a little gray. I'm going to bring back just a touch here. Now the only thing I'm really going to want to work on is those rocks. I mean, because really I just want to kind of tone those rocks down just a touch. So there we go. I toned down the rocks just a touch. It looks a little more balanced from front to back. But my edits happen to the waterfalls in the background. Now there's 2 ways of doing this. You can either mask them out, but in this case, since I made a duplicate layer, I'm just going to delete those edits. So I'm going to grab an eraser, and I'm just going to delete, as you can see here, as I'm going across the waterfall, it comes back to being nice and bright. And I'm just going to delete those. Now, if I want to see what's really out there, look, nope, okay, all fixed, yep. Now, all I got is my rocks, the highlights for the rocks, and the rocks down here. And that should overstep the original picture. So there it is without, there it is with, darkens it up just a touch. Now another thing that we can do is we're going to go Control-Shift-Alt-E to make a clone stamp of this. So now we have a final image, all one piece up top. It's kind of like mixing down with audio. If you got like a music bed and then you're talking over it and recording, the mix down is like this Control-Shift-Alt-E. It makes one final composite layer of all your edits underneath. So that's what I did, was a Control-Shift-Alt-E. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to do another edit to this. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the dodge and the dodge and burn tool. I think I'm going to do dodge because that's really going to be the best thing. I'm going to make a nice big brush. And I'm going to make sure it's nice and soft. The hardness here is 0%, means it's as soft as it's going to get. So I'm just going to paint over this front rock one time. Oh, dodges to go brighter. Sorry. Edit undo. I do that all the time. I should realize burn is to make it darker. So we make a nice one big brush here and one foul swoop here. Am I close? I'm pretty close. Let me do it one more time just for giggles. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, there we go. I burned it in. I really like that. Now that looks balanced to me. So the highlight adjustment, now burning it in a little bit so it burns in evenly. I like that. That really came out nice. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that I bring the entire photo up all at the same time and make my final tonal adjustments. I'm going to look and just see if there's anything in this picture I really want to get rid of, or maybe I want to, maybe we'll paint with a little bit more light. So using the dodge and burn tool, you can do direct edits on a layer. If you're like me, who, if I'm working on something that I really want to really make really good and I'm going to spend some time on it, I'm going to make copies of all my edits on a new layer. That way I don't destroy the original. So I'm going to make another layer here of this composite that I just burned that bottom rock on. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to do, I'm going to actually just do the image adjustment instead of an adjustment layer. You could do an adjustment layer as well, and that would be a non-destructive edit as well. And what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to do a curves adjustment right here. So now we got the curves adjustment, and I think what I want to do is I'm going to see if we can't do the darks. And I think my darkest value that I want to have is going to be right up here in the walkway. As you can see, my eyedropper moving, I hope. Oh, that's a little too much. Let's see if we can find something a little darker. Lighten it back up. Wow, that got really dark really quick. I gotta find, let's see here. I think I'm gonna have to start getting glasses. I can't see where my dark areas are here. Huh. Let's cancel it out, come back to it, and look at it again here. We're going to try to do a image, adjustment, curves, and I want to set the dark point, and the darkest point on this, maybe it's these rocks up front. Let's try it. Well, that really does a little bit of a color shift too at the same time. One of the problems with Photoshop is you can run into color shifts and stuff. But the nice thing here is we can set our white point, so we know the white point's going to be the froth up here in the falls, or one of these really bright areas. I'm going to use the front froth here to bring it back up. Oh, good. It color shifted back a little bit, and then I'm going to set my mid-tone. And I think my mid-tone is going to be this grayish area right out here in the middle. A little too red. There we go. Perfect. All right, so now I've got a really contrast scene here. The rocks stand right out, maybe a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the opacity of this new layer, this duplicate layer, and I'm just going to back that baby off. If you're at 100%, this is what it looks like. If you're at 0%, this is what it looks like. Notice it's bluish. I'm going to just bring it back, and I'm going to dial in the perfect exposure of that contrast. Because I don't want it all the way up there. That's too much. I want right about, how about 70%? That looks good. I like 70%. That looks really good. Great. Now, saying if you were getting this ready for maybe to be a print or to be something that you're going to hang up, maybe you're going to make an enlargement like a 14 by 11 by 14 print and then frame it and all that stuff, I would recommend that you do at least one sharpening, if not two, because it is a scene. It's pretty sharp the way it is, but I'm just going to probably do another composite. Now, this is how I always do my sharpening, is I make another composite of the scene. So I click on my top layer, Control-Alt-Shift-E, and then I'm going to do my sharpening. So I'm going to go to Filter, and I'm going to go to Sharpen, and I'm going to go to Unsharpen Mask. One of the best sharpening tools right there. So if you look in the scene here, it's a little bit much for this scene. I think if we unpreview it and we preview it, notice how it really gets kind of harsh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back it off to probably about 75%. Test it again. Okay, that's a little bit nicer. But I'm going to bring the threshold up a little bit. That threshold tells it to not affect as many pixels in the same area. So it tries to soften that effect. Kind of like a fade. You could also fade the effect as well. There is a fade option. I believe it's under Edit, Fade Effect, and that'll do it. So I like that. That's good. So before, here's the before, and here's the sharpened thing. Now, when you go to print this, what that extra sharpening does makes it look kind of weird on screen. But when you put it on print and you view it from a distance, it now makes the photo really pop and really look nice and tack sharp. You know, another thing we could do, since we're already right here, we could take and maybe we want to put some highlights in here. The light is coming from the upper right-hand corner, or right directly over top. You could add shafts of light, and this is kind of a one of those techniques that you could do in, you know, desktop publishing, or maybe you're making a newsletter or something. Maybe you want to show a particular item. So what you could do is you could do a new layer, and this is a really neat, real quick way of doing this. Grab a brush, grab some white, okay, and we're going to make the brush real huge, okay? Now, you could do this with selections, you could do this with shapes and stuff like that. I'm just going to do it with a brush. So I'm just going to put in these lines here, make it come all the way down. Spread just a little bit down here. Spread. All right. So there's our shafts of light. So I want to make sure the upper part of the shaft is nice and defined. Bottom part gets a little spreaded. Spreads out a little bit. Now I'm going to change the blending mode of the layer to screening or lighten, either one. You could even do soft light. Soft light would work. That almost gives you the effect right there. So soft light would be an easy way to do it. I'm going to dial now in the opacity so I can get just the shaft of light look that I'm looking for. I think I'm going to blur this too, because I think that's too harsh. It didn't soften enough. So let's do a filter and blur, Gaussian blur, and we're going to blur the crud out of this. We're going to make it like 10, maybe 20. 20 looks a little better. Really super soft. We really want it about as soft as we could possibly stand it without getting muddy. So there you go. Now you got shafts of light coming from where the light source is. And it's not so overpowering. I mean, without, with, and I just painted with light. I just made something out of something else. Take it and just added a little something. And that's kind of neat. So let's save this back. So we're going to go File, Save. Change it back to a JPEG and hit Save. I want to replace it. Yes. Okay. So let's go back and compare the original. So here's our original photo on screen. A little blue. This highlight up front here, the rocks are a little too hot. The falls is just right. There's some dark areas. And what I did was I took and darkened that rock, balanced the photo out a little bit. I got the contrast in the rocks to stand out, so there's a lot of definition. And then I worked and got the color, the overall color contrast, and the light and darkness of this photo to be a little more balanced where I wanted it. So that being said, there's the original. Here's the edited one. A little bit different. I don't know. Let's look at. I guess I didn't line it up very well either. Huh. But anyway, here's the original. Here's the edited one. A lot more contrast. You got that shafts of light thing that I did right in the middle here. And kind of neat. Some different things that you can do. Let's see. We got another image here. This one needs a lot of work. It's a crane that I took up at Seneca Lake a long time ago. And this was one of my favorite photos to photo edit because it just took you through some real basic photo edits and really got you from point A to point B. And it made you think about what you wanted to do. So here's what I want to do with this, okay? I want to get rid of these spots because I had some dust on my lens and these spots came out of nowhere. I want to make this area and our crane completely black. It should be a total silhouette. And I'm going to try to do and bring some yellow or red back into the sky and try to get some blue into here very quickly because we're at 740. All right, great. So maybe we'll get through all of them. Maybe we won't. Let's give it a shot. So real quick, we're going to get the heel brush out. We're going to take the base layer and we're going to start healing those dust spots away. Fastest way to get rid of dust spots has got to be the heel brush. And you can zoom in on your photo and start looking for the differences in color tones. And a lot of times it's real easy to spot, especially when you're like looking at it going, oh, there's a spot. Yeah, okay, there's a spot too. There's a spot. And those are pretty much gone at this point. All right. Oh, nope, I missed a couple. All right, so we did the healing brush. Now we got our base layer looking the way we want it. Maybe I don't. You know what? One other thing I might want to do is, well, maybe not. Don't have enough time. Okay, so let's move on to toning this right. So I'm going to put in a new layer. I'm going to do a levels layer. I'm going to bring the dark slider in to give me that silhouette, and I might even move the picture darker just to get that silhouette looking the way I want it. That's not bad. All right, now I'm going to bring the white slider back up to try to recompensate for the darkness of the photo. Now I can bring it all the way back to where the histogram starts. That doesn't look quite right to me. It kind of gets kind of pink there. That's kind of nice, but I think right about there is going to be good. So not quite all the way to the histogram, but pretty close. I'm going to play again with the midtones. Where do I want my midtones to be? Do I want it darker? Do I want it lighter? I'm thinking probably somewhere right about there. That looks good. All right. So now we go back to our layers. Now what I want to do is I want to boost the saturation. So I'm going to take and boost the hue and saturation. You could do this with vibrance. I'm so used to doing this from... Oh, look, you guys aren't seeing the edits. Let's put it over here. We're going to boost the hue and saturation a little bit. See, when you get in a hurry, you gotta remember to stop and look at what's going on. I'm going to boost the hue and saturation here. Well, let me take you back to the previous step. In the levels, in the levels control panel, this is what my levels look like. I took the dark slider, moved it in. I brought the white slider, moved it in. And I took the midtones and put them where I was happy. So if we take and click the little eyeball, it shows us the before and now the after. Before, after. Notice perfect silhouette of the crane in the foreground. Nice soft background. So going back in the layers, I started to do a hue and saturation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the saturation a touch. Probably right around 30% because I do want to get it up there someplace. And whoops, I didn't want to click that. Let's back this off one. And then I'm going to shift the colors ever so slightly, I think, to the red side. Just to give that a little bit of a reddish tinge, almost like it's like sunset, you know? And then maybe I might play a little bit more with the reds. I'm going to go into the reds channel by itself, and I'm going to oversaturate the reds a little bit more. Might be pressing my luck here, but that's not too bad, I suppose. Yeah, that's not bad. So now what I'm going to also do is I'm going to take and I'm going to probably let's see, how much time do I got? 2 minutes? 4 minutes? 4 minutes. All right, so one of the things that this has produced, because it's a long exposure, it's also a low light exposure, you can see a lot of noise up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Control-Alt-Shift-E to give me that composite layer. I'm then going to go into the filter and I'm going to go into noise and I'm going to reduce the noise. And I'm going to see if we can't get a good reduction in noise without losing the details of the picture. A little too strong on the noise reduction. So we lost a little bit of detail here. Back off both the... I think I was trying to demonstrate this and that's why these are way too high. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so that's not too bad. Yeah, almost. Let's strengthen it up maybe 2 notches. We'll go to 7. So basically what this tool does is it basically gives you several basic settings. So how strong is the noise reduction? How much detail do you want to preserve? I'm going to bring the detail preserving up to about 10% because I still want to have the detail of the shifts in color and stuff. I don't want to make that blurry, but I do want to have a decent photo. I'm going to reduce the color noise as well because you want to get rid of the spots, the color spots, so the color shifts in the noise. As well as I'm going to sharpen the details so that we get a nice, clear, sharp photo. So I think we're going to keep these settings right here, 7, 10%, 50%, 25%, and see what we get. And that's not bad. I think that's pretty nice. I mean, I got a couple spots that I think I need to just take the heel brush. You can see another piece of dust right here. That kind of made a weird artifact. Another spot here. I had a dirty, dirty lens. You dirty, dirty lens. That's so funny. Another spot right here. I cleaned that one earlier and it didn't work. That'll work. All right. So there's a kind of our finished photo. You got the nice reddish sunset-y kind of sky. You got background hills way in the back. You got some foreground hills here with a church steeple. Then the lake, kind of a misty lake look, and then it comes up to rough waters, then a nice silhouette of that crane. I really like that. So let's save the file, save as, and JPEG, and just save, and it should fix it. All right, cool. All right, now let's go compare. Okay, here's our original photo. You can see the dust, and dust, and dust. You can also tell that this is kind of a bluish red. It really isn't popping off the page. This is not a true silhouette. The water needs to be a little more contrast to it, but it's really not bad. You really can't see the separation of the 3 layers of hills here either. So by making the photo edits that we did some noise reduction, fixed the dust spots, boosted the color saturation, and brought a lot of that detail back in and then changed the exposure a little bit, we ended up getting this. So there's our new photo. So the original, and now the photo edited one. So there you go. I just want to thank you all for joining me for a fabulous hour here on the Digital Babble. If you got any questions, or if you want to send any comments, or if you want to just send information or send in your photos, give me an email at thedigitalbabble@gmail.com. You can check us out on our website, tdbny.com, if you want to go look at any of the previous shows. Thanks to Finger Lakes One for hosting or broadcasting our show live on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. So we're on every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. I'm your host, Flipper. I'm a photographer, computer tech geek. Love my Photoshop and whatever else I can get my hands on. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us, and I will catch you on the flip side.
A Flipside studio production. It's the Digital Babble. Tune in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on fingerlakes1.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter.